if you can. Give everyone a second to trickle in, and I'll get started. What's up, Trav? Give me just a few minutes. I'm waiting on the link to share on Twitter. Then I'll get started. Yeah, for those of you that watched the morning breakdown, I didn't realize the Minnesota White Sox game wasn't included in the slate on Draftkings. It looks like Fanduel kept it, but Draftkings doesn't have it on their slate, so no Dozier for Draftkings. Yeah, pitching's horrible tonight. All right. Since you mentioned pitching, we can go ahead and start there. It looks like Skaggs is the highest rated pitcher on my projections on my website. It's not even really close. The Rangers have a really high strikeout rate against lefties. Skaggs is in a really good spot, and the rest of the field's pretty weak. So I think if you're going to start your lineup and kind of build around one guy, I think Skaggs is that guy. I have him within 0.3 of a point of Alex Wood tonight, and he's about half the price. So on DraftKings and FanDuel, I think in cash games you should start with Tyler Skaggs. It's not even really close. So go ahead and plug him in. On FanDuel, that gives you a ton of room to spend up on hitters. And on DraftKings, we're probably looking at a combination with a guy like Fulte. For those that don't know, that's Fultonevich of the Braves. My optimizer is looking like it's going to lean towards Garrett Cole right now. I'm not a big Garrett Cole fan, so I could manually pivot off of that. But he is only 8.7K, and he does have a rather high floor compared to some of these guys. I don't like Cole Hamels at all. I think it's a pretty tough matchup for him. Probably not where I'm going to target him at 11.6K. He's actually one of my worst rated pitchers on a per dollar basis. I don't think I'll look to Hamels at all. I'll give you guys a few tournament options too. Although the way the slate's shaken up, I don't think Skaggs is going to be too high owned. I think a lot of people will go different routes. Eric, I didn't get the link on Twitter. I don't have it. Nothing yet. On FanDuel, I actually kind of like Wade Miley. He's only 6.4K. I think if you're looking for a pivot in tournaments, he's got a really high win probability. Their offense is projected to go nuts tonight. The biggest issue for him is going to be pitching around Chris Davis. So Wade Miley is, and then Taijuan Walker, who I've seen a lot of people are on Taijuan Walker. So I don't know if you're going to get the ownership that you want in tournaments. But I think he's a decent play in cash games and tournaments. The current Mets lineup is really not good. They have a high strikeout rate. He's been pitching really well. Somebody told me he came off a huge game last time out. Yeah, Trout's a lock for me everywhere. I don't even think it's close. I think you should just kind of plug him in and move on. It's interesting to see how different my lineup builds are now than they were early in the day. I don't think that my optimizer is paying up to Cole because it really likes him that much. I think it's just a matter of the savings and the value being there with other guys. I mean, you've got Robinson Cano, who's at only 4.4K tonight. There's Drupal Cabrera, 3K. Andrew McCutcheon, 3.8K. I mean, there's just value all over the place, which is why my optimizer is reaching up to Cole right now to go along with Skaggs on Draftkings. But I think there's different routes you can go. Like I said, you can go with Taijuan Walker. You can drop down to Fultonevich if you want. You could even drop all the way down to Wade Miley. He rates pretty well for me. I think all those guys are in play. SP2 or starting pitcher 2 on DraftKings is going to be a bit of a gamble, no matter how you look at it. But I'm actually seeing Giselman rate decently. Obviously, he gets the Diamondbacks, not in Chase Field. So I'm going to move on to first base. If you guys have any more questions about pitcher, go ahead and fire away, and I'll try to get to them. I still don't have it, Eric. I'm not getting anything, man. Nothing. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. First base. Let's see. Yeah, I don't like Stratton at all. I'd actually look to target Stratton if you're building in tournaments. I like Milwaukee quite a bit. You won't see any Stratton in any of my lineups, tournaments or cash. Just not somebody that I'm too fond of and that I'm actively targeting. At first base, like I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you guys caught the earlier segment. I posted it on YouTube. You can also watch it on here. But Goldschmidt's the guy that I'm going to build around on DraftKings. He's really expensive at 5.6K. But he's a solid value at that price, and he's got a really high floor for the most part, as high a floor as you can have in baseball. On FanDuel, I mean, you just have infinite funds on FanDuel. He's only 4K over there. Trout gave me a 0 yesterday, so him and Goldschmidt are both due today. You don't see them go back-to-back goose eggs very often. Not that that's a reason to roster them, but they're both in good spots. Goldschmidt's only 4K on FanDuel. I think that's a pretty good price. I think I'm going to roster him over there as well. Trout's price is really high over there, kind of going off topic, but Trout's price is really high on FanDuel. He's making a lot of my optimals, but he's not making my top optimals. So there's a good chance that I get away from Mike Trout on FanDuel just because his price point is really high. And guys like Chris Davis and Mookie Betts and Goldschmidt, Machado, they're all considerably cheaper. And they all have similar upside. So that's probably the route that I'll go over there. But Goldschmidt at first base, you really don't need to look any further. I'll try to pull up some values just in case you guys are trying to go against the grain. But I think you should lock in Goldschmidt in cash games. Ryder Jones is minimum salary. I don't know if their lineup's out yet. I don't have the little confirmed check marks on my website yet. But Ryder Jones is the top value at 2K. I can't imagine that you need that unless you're going in tournaments and you're playing Alex Wood or Cole Hamels. Albert Pujols is a decent value. I like his matchup against Hamels, but again, that's more of a tournament pivot. Mancini, Alonso, Healy, more just tournament options. Just plug in Goldie and cash and move on. Let me look at FanDuel real quick. Yeah, Pujols is one of my least favorite players to roster, for what it's worth. My old Twitter's up, Eric? What? Don't get me all excited. No, it's suspended. It's not up. I did get the link finally though. Yeah, Pujols can barely even walk. I don't know how he still plays. He's pulling the Victor Martinez card where he just walks to first base every time. On FanDuel, if you're going to go cheaper than Goldschmidt, you've got three guys kind of in that same price range in the mid-tier. Hanley Ramirez, Chris Davis, Adrian Gonzalez, and even Ryan Healy to a certain extent. So those are your pivots if you're looking to pay down. But again, Goldschmidt's going to be really high owned tonight. I don't think it's a great idea to fade him. I mentioned earlier that I like Freeman in tournaments, James. I really hate Freeman in cash. He's been ice cold, and his price hasn't really come down that much. So he's more of a tournament pivot for me. But you're going to get him at really low ownership, which is nice. In tournaments, if you can get Freeman, under 5% owned, I'd say go for it. And I think he's going to be that low. I'm going to move on to second base. Second base is a little tricky because on DraftKings, we don't get the Minnesota game, which means we don't get Brian Dozier, assuming he plays on the second leg of a back-to-back. Let's see. Yeah. Brian Dozier and Jonathan Scope on FanDuel. Those are the only two guys that you really need to look at. You could throw Nunez into that mix, but I think it's a three-man race on FanDuel. You've got Scope, you've got Nunez, and you've got Dozier. I don't think you need to dive much deeper than that. My build is currently paying down to Scope at second base, and I think that's a fine route if you don't want to pay up for Dozier. On DraftKings, again, it's going to be a little more muddied up. But Robinson Cano is the clear top option. And then after that, you're looking at overpaying for Scope at 4.6K or paying all the way down to Asdrubal Cabrera. Right now, I really like Asdrubal in the shortstop position. I like punting with him there and keeping Cano at second base. But Cano's too cheap. 4.4K for Cano in this matchup it's just too low. So low-owned upside stack. Well, it would have been the White Sox originally. I'll get to stacks at the end, Ward. That's something I usually touch on at the end of the segment. And I'll kind of let you guys know which two teams or which three teams that I like the most. It would have been the White Sox. So on FanDuel, I still like going to the White Sox. I think they're going to be pretty low-owned, especially since I think there's some rain concerns there tonight, which should drop their ownership even lower. And I'll have a weather update for you guys here in just a minute. But I really like the White Sox on FanDuel, and I'll get to more stacks towards the end of the segment on DraftKings and let you know who's going to be low-owned and who you can target. I do like the Dodgers. I'll just mention them really quick. Their run total has been dipping, and I don't think they're going to be one of the higher-owned teams of the night. So I'm going to move on to third base. Just 1 second here. The conversation is probably going to begin and end with Manny Machado. What's up, Robinson? But yeah, there's plenty of other plays. Jake Lamb, if you want to go that route. But Machado's the guy. On DraftKings, on FanDuel, pretty much anywhere. I think you plug in Manny Machado in cash games. Even at his price at 5.6K, I think he's worth the spin, and I think he's going to be really high owned. On DraftKings for tournaments, I like the Red Sox stack. If you want to pivot to a guy like Nunez, we mentioned Freeman a minute ago. I think you can go that route. Jake Lamb is 4.8K. That's really affordable. He gets a great matchup against a guy that struggles against lefties. The only thing he doesn't have is the ballpark going for him this time around, which should drive his ownership down. That's also why his price is down. So I'm completely fine with Jake Lamb if you want to go that route. I think he's going to be really popular. But I'll probably go up to Manny Machado. Despite the lower average, he's on absolute fire right now. And you can see that by the gradual incline in his average and his home run totals. He's actually doing well with runners in scoring position recently as well. So I really like Machado on both sides. Nunez, Lamb, Freeman. I'm seeing a lot of Kyle Seager in my optimals. You can go that route. I think my optimizer, since it's going up to Cole, is actually dropping off of Manny Machado and dropping down to Kyle Seager, which I'm okay with. It gives you a little bit of a mini stack with Cano and Seager, and he's really low priced at 3.7K. But if you're going to drop lower than Garrett Cole at pitcher, you might as well pay up for Machado. Give me just 1 second. I'll look at FanDuel here. Fanduel Machado is just easier to get in if you're going with Skaggs. Skaggs is 6.6K on Fanduel, which just basically means you can get whoever you want at every other position. And Manny Machado is gonna fall into that category. So on Fanduel, I think Machado is a building block. On DraftKings, I think you can get away with dropping down to a guy like Seager. And in tournaments, I think you should pivot off of both of those guys. In tournaments, you want to go for low ownership. For those that don't know, that are new to daily fantasy sports, and if you're going for low ownership, I think Freeman, Beltre, Shaw, Justin Turner, those guys are going to be really owned. Somebody said Devers. Devers is just scorching the earth right now. I'm still waiting for him to kind of go into a slump, but if you want to ride the wave, I'm all for it. Yeah. Atlanta's a huge hitter's park now. And that's something I've touched on all year. Anytime you can target hitters there, it's probably a good idea. Fulte really struggles against lefties. So he dominates righties, struggles against lefties. Now I'm going to look at shortstop real quick. There's not a whole lot to see here. I like dropping down to Asdrubal Cabrera on DraftKings, but there's other options. I mean, if you really want to spend up here, if you want to win the position, basically, you can spend on Tim Beckham. It's almost guaranteed that he has a good game. Segura, yeah, he's one of my top ones. Robinson, my top shortstops are the usual suspects: Beckham, Semien, Seager, Lindor, and Gene Segura. But Asdrubal Cabrera has the lowest price by a mile, and shortstop, I mean, almost every time around is a position that you want to spend down on. It's where you can get a lot of value. You're going to get Asdrubal in a good pitcher's park. Asdrubal in a neutral park against a poor pitcher. So even though he doesn't have a whole lot of power anymore, I like targeting him in cash games. In tournaments, all the upper tier guys are in play. I would probably steer away from Beckham. I think he's going to be pretty high owned. I really like Semien in tournaments. If you're going to kind of try to get a lower ownership guy, I think Semien will probably see a drop in ownership. And everyone else is just part of a stack. If you run a Red Sox stack, you'll have Bogarts. Rangers stack, you'll have Elvis. But I wouldn't go out of my way to target those guys in tournaments unless you're doing a stack. Segura, another one of those guys, would just be part of a stack with the lefties on Seattle. I really don't like the matchup for him, but if you're stacking Seattle, I think he's a good guy to throw in there. I'm seeing a lot of variations on my FanDuel lineups at shortstop. Looks like Beckham's really underpriced over there. He's only 3.4K. Their run total's through the roof. You can almost guarantee that Beckham's going to be the chalk or the high-owned shortstop on FanDuel. So I would go ahead and lock him in cash games. A tournament pivot that you'd probably want to look at is Semien, and that's pretty much it. It's a two-man race over there. They're both underpriced, but I like Beckham in cash games and Semien in tournaments. I guess the next position's outfield. It looks like my optimizer on FanDuel is going to mid-tier guys in the outfield to pair with Mookie Betts. I actually really like Betts tonight. I think it's a good time to target him. I'm okay with the Mike Trout fade on FanDuel. He's 5.2K over there. That's a big salary on FanDuel to pay off. For DraftKings players, I mean, the cap on FanDuel is $35,000 compared to $50,000 on DraftKings, and Mike Trout's the same price basically. So that's a big price to pay. I'd probably go with the mid-tier guys: Adam Jones, AJ Pollock, Chris Davis, Mookie Betts. Matt Kemp even falls into that category. He's kind of on my no-fly list. I'm not a big Matt Kemp fan. He just always seems to shit the bed when I roster him. But those are pretty much the only guys you need to look at on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I think you have to lock in Mike Trout. I don't even think it's a debate. I don't think you should think twice about it. Just lock in Mike Trout in cash games. And then you're kind of just – I mean, Nunez has outfield eligibility on DraftKings. I really like him there. There's a lot of guys that you can play in this spot. You've got Chris Davis. You've got Andrew McCutchen at 3.8K, which I really like, especially if you're trying to get a higher-priced pitcher in. Chris Davis, Michael Conforto, Cespedes, Kemp, Benintendi. I think all those guys are in play, but I definitely would not fade Trout in cash games. For those of you that are new to daily fantasy, if you fade someone, it just means that you don't play them. I would plug in Trout, lock him into all your cash game lineups, and just kind of build from there. At catcher, I did skip catcher, didn't I? I'm seeing a lot of Zunino and Grandal, along with Posey on DraftKings. I think all three of those guys are in play. I'm not a huge Zunino fan, but it looks like his price point helps, kind of fill out a lineup if you're fitting a guy like Cole or Alex Wood or Cole Hamels. But Grandal's my top-rated catcher, and Posey's right beneath him on DraftKings. I think those are the only two guys that you need to consider along with Zunino on DraftKings. Suzuki's a good tournament option. He's hit or miss. He doesn't ever really get a great lineup spot. I don't have live lineups in front of me, so I could be missing something on that front. But, yeah, Grandal, Posey, and Zunino. Those are the only guys making my optimals at the moment. So those are probably the guys I'm going to end up sticking with unless some crazy catcher value opens up in the next 30 to 45 minutes. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to look at tournament stacks here real quick. I had a few people ask about it. For those of you not watching on Periscope, if you download the Periscope app and add me on there, then you can type in questions and I can answer them in live time. You can do that on Facebook as well. Anybody on Facebook Live, you just type a comment. I keep up with them and I'll answer your questions in live time as well. All right. Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers just continue. Their run total just keeps dropping. They're not in a great ballpark, which is really going to drive their ownership down. I think they have a huge game today. I really think the Dodgers go off. They're my number one stack. It's not really close. On Fanduel, I really like the White Sox. Obviously, they're not on the DraftKings slate. Yeah, I mean, in cash games, that's a good strategy, Vinny, if you're going to go with that in cash games. Oh, they got Austin Jackson 2-hole. That'll open up some value, AP. Yeah, I don't think no Bellinger really hurts their lineup that much. I mean, you're not looking at a whole lot of home run potential tonight in that ballpark anyway. And I think 4.3 is criminally low for their implied run total. And again, no Bellinger is just going to drive their ownership further and further through the floor. So the Dodgers are my favorite matchup by a mile as far as tournament stacks go. I think the Indians, you're seeing their run total plummet as well. I think you can get great ownership on those guys. I think they're going to have a big game as well. So if I were to pick two teams to stack on DraftKings, it would be the Dodgers and the Indians. On FanDuel, I really like the White Sox and also the Dodgers and the Indians. The Red Sox total kind of came back to life, which means they're going to be owned. I'm seeing a lot of bets and Nunez and Benintendi across the industry. So that stack's probably null and void in tournaments. You're not going to get the ownership that you initially wanted or that I initially thought you would. I don't think the Rangers are a horrible stack. I think Skaggs is going to be really popular. The Rangers have been on fire. I'm personally going to ride with Skaggs in cash. I think he has a great game. But if you're looking for kind of a one-off stack, I think throwing the Rangers in a few, I think you'll get really, really, really low ownership on those guys tonight because nobody likes to roster hitters against their pitcher, and you'll probably see Skaggs' ownership really inflated. I think the same goes for the Dodgers is the same deal. Garrett Cole's going to be high owned, so you'll get the Dodgers at a low price point. Anybody have any questions? Got about 4 more minutes here. Davies, DraftKings or FanDuel, Robinson? I like that lineup a lot, Zink. Who would I stack from the Dodgers? I haven't looked at their live lineup yet, Trav, but I heard there's no Bellinger. I mean, the usual suspects is who I would stack. Yeah, 1 through 4. Chris Taylor, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, Adrian Gonzalez. I think all those guys are in a really good spot. FD on Zach Davies. Yeah, I really like Chris Taylor tonight. I know he's not going to make excuse me. I know he's not going to make optimals because their run total has dropped so far. But in tournaments, I love Chris Taylor, and I could even see a circumstance where you use him in cash games. I'm looking at Zach Davies right now on Fanduel. Yeah, Zach Davies is my 7th highest rated pitcher. I think in tournaments, I think you can build a pretty good lineup around him in tournaments. The issue that you run into with Davies is just the fact that he faces a team that doesn't strike out a whole lot, which can really limit his upside. But if you're just doing it to differentiate and just throwing him in a few lineups, I'm okay with it. I just don't think it's a cash game strategy. I think someone like Taijuan Walker has way more upside in tournaments than Zach Davies. So that's probably the route I would go. Anybody else? About to hop off. Get them in while you can. All right, I guess we're good to go. Yeah, I mentioned Alonso earlier, Robinson. I think he's a decent play. He's a mid-tier guy. I think if you're doing an A's stack, you definitely want to get him in. I think someone said they were doing a game stack, so I think I would definitely put him in the game stack if you're doing A's and Orioles. For any of you that aren't subscribers, be sure to sign up at dailyfantasylines.com. If you shoot me a message and you're a new subscriber, I can get you a free 3-day trial. Also, I've been playing on Fantasydraft, and I've had a lot of success over there. For anybody that wants to try out a new daily fantasy site, I will post this on Twitter, Facebook, and I'll also upload it to YouTube. If you guys missed any of it, hashtag Guru Elite sucks. Is that what that says, Ryan? Guru Elite sucks? Yeah, that's what it says. Okay, just making sure. All right, guys, good luck.